I had been searching for weeks, my eyes glued to my computer screen, fingers tapping away at the keyboard as I scoured the web for a good deal. My old gaming monitor had seen better days, and I was desperate to find a replacement that wouldn't break the bank. It was a Saturday afternoon when the perfect ad caught my eye. The Craigslist post boasted a top-of-the-line gaming monitor at a price so low it seemed impossible. The seller claimed it was practically brand new, just a few weeks old. A pang of doubt crept into my mind, but I decided to take the plunge and message the seller. After exchanging a few messages, we agreed to meet at the seller's house later that evening. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I found myself pulling into the driveway of an unassuming two-story house in a quiet neighborhood. I made sure to back in so I could easily make a getaway if I needed to. I sent a message to let him know I had arrived. "Come in," came the reply. The doors unlocked. I hesitated, glanced around the dimly lit street, feeling uneasy about entering a stranger's house. But I shook off my doubts and approached the front door. My heart thumped in my chest as I slowly turned the doorknob and stepped inside. The living room was sparsely furnished, with a few pieces of worn furniture scattered around. The television was on, the flickering images casting eerie shadows across the walls, but there was no sign of the seller. "Hello?" I called out hesitantly. My voice echoed through the empty house. No response. A shiver crawled down my spine, and I considered backing out. But the thought of that too-good-to-be-true deal kept me rooted in place. It happened in an instant. One moment, I was standing in the dimly lit living room, and the next, everything went black. A rough fabric pressed against my face, binding my eyes and plunging me into darkness. A mixture of fear and confusion washed over me as I felt my arms being wrenched behind my back and tightly bound. Panic set in, and I struggled against my restraints, but it was no use. When the blindfold was finally removed, I found myself in a dim, musty basement. My heart raced as I realized I was strapped in a chair, my hands bound behind me. Two figures loomed over me, their faces obscured by ski masks. They spoke in hushed tones, their voices cold and menacing. "We want your money," one of them growled. "All of it, and your address. We're gonna clean you out." I pleaded with them, offering to give them whatever cash I had on me, but they weren't interested in my paltry offering. They wanted everything, including my car, which was my only hope of escaping quickly. Hours passed, each one feeling like an eternity as the two men taunted and tormented me. My fear turned into anger, and anger turned into determination. I was not going to let them take everything I had worked for. As they left me alone for a moment, I seized my opportunity. With the burst of adrenaline-fueled strength, I managed to snap the binds on my wrists. My heart pounded in my ears as I crept towards the door, praying they wouldn't hear me. I climbed up the stairs. Each creak threatened to give away my position, but fortune was on my side, and I made it to the first floor without detection. I peered around the corner, my eyes scanned for the front door. There it was, my escape route. I sprinted, my legs fueled with desperation, and flung open the door. The cool night air hit my face as I realized that my pockets had been emptied, including my car keys. So instead, I ran down the street, my heart pounding in my chest. I stumbled upon a convenience store, its fluorescent lights, a beacon of hope in the darkness. Bursting through the doors, I frantically searched for a phone. The bewildered store clerk eyed me wearily, but handed over the phone without question. I dialed 911, my fingers trembling as I relayed my ordeal to the operator. She assured me that help was on the way, and I allowed myself a small sigh of relief. I had made it out alive, but I knew I wasn't safe yet. Minutes later, the wail of sirens filled the air, and police cars skidded to a halt outside of the convenience store. Officers rushed in, their faces grim, and I recounted my story once more. They wasted no time, escorting me back to the house where I had been held captive. The basement was empty. The only evidence of my ordeal was the broken bindings lying on the floor. My captors had vanished, but the police promised they would do everything in their power to catch them. In the days that followed, the Craigslist ad disappeared, and I was left with a shattered sense of security. The gaming monitor I had coveted seemed so trivial now, a foolish pursuit that had nearly cost me everything. I had always been a fan of smart gadgets. My apartment filled with every IoT device you could think of. From the lights to the locks, everything was automated and controlled through my smartphone. I relished the convenience and the level of control it afforded me. So, when I came across a Craigslist ad for a beautiful, sleek, smart lamp for my bedroom, I was naturally intrigued. The seller had posted a picture of it, bathing in soft, ambient light, and it seemed perfect for my cozy little room. I responded to the ad immediately. We agreed to meet at a Starbucks halfway between our locations, the sort of public place that would make both of us feel comfortable. As a woman, safety was always on my mind, and meeting in public places was something I never compromised on. The drive to the Starbucks was uneventful, and as I pulled into the parking lot, I spotted him. The seller was a tall, thin man with a mop of messy hair, dressed in a black hoodie and jeans. He had the lamp with him, packed neatly in a box. His movements were twitchy, and his eyes darted around the coffee shop as if he expected someone to jump out at him. He seemed a little creepy, but he was polite enough, and the transaction went smoothly. I handed over the cash, he handed over the lamp, and we both went our separate ways. As I got into my car, I couldn't help but feel a little uneasy about the transaction. I shook it off, attributing my discomfort to my overactive imagination. When I got home, I eagerly set up the lamp in my bedroom, admiring the soft, calming glow it casted over the room. It was perfect. The first night with the lamp, I slept like a baby. The second night, however, was different. I had a nightmare, the kind that wakes you up in a cold sweat, heart pounding in your chest. I glanced at the clock. It was 3:12 a.m. The room seemed to flicker in the dim glow of the smart lamp. Its colors shifted subtly, as if in response to my racing pulse. Dismissing the odd sensation, I eventually fell back asleep. The next day, I received a message on Craigslist from the seller. "Did you have any nightmares last night?" it read. I stared at the screen. My heart dropped into my stomach. How could he possibly know? I chalked it up to a weird coincidence and decided not to respond. Over the next few days, more messages arrived, each one more intrusive and unsettling than the last. "I saw you tossing and turning last night," one message said. "You look so peaceful when you sleep," read another. It became increasingly apparent that the man was watching me somehow. As the messages continued, my paranoia grew. I searched my apartment looking for any sign of a hidden camera or microphone. I changed my Wi-Fi password and even updated my device's security settings, but the messages kept coming. It wasn't until one sleepless night, lying in bed and staring at the lamp, that it finally clicked. The smart lamp. Somehow, the man had installed a night vision camera inside the lamp's body, allowing him to watch me through the very device that was supposed to bring me comfort. The thought sent shivers down my spine. I felt violated, exposed. My home, my sanctuary, had been invaded by a stranger, and I had unknowingly let him in. I knew I had to do something. The next morning, I took the smart lamp out of my room and threw it into the dumpster behind my apartment building. I couldn't bear the thought of keeping it in my home for another moment. As I watched it disappear beneath the trash, a wave of relief washed over me. At least for now, the nightmare was over. But the messages didn't stop. They continued, becoming more frequent and more disturbing. Fear began to consume me, and I found it increasingly difficult to sleep. eat, or even focus on my daily tasks. I knew I had to involve the police. I gathered all the messages and went to the local police station. They listened intently as I told them my story, examining the messages with furrowed brows. They assured me they would do everything in their power to track down the man and put an end to the harassment. Days turned into weeks, and the police continued their investigation. They discovered that the man had used a fake name and address when he had first communicated on Craigslist. They traced the IP address he had used, but it led to a dead end, a public library with dozens of computers. The investigation seemed to stall, and my life had become a blur of anxiety and fear. I changed my phone number and deleted my Craigslist account, but the messages still found their way to me. I started to feel like I was losing my grip on reality, and the man's sinister presence haunted me at every turn. One evening, as I sat in my living room, tears streaming down my face, I heard a knock at my door. I hesitated, then slowly approached the door, heart pounding in my chest. I looked through the peephole, and there stood a police officer, his face solemn and concerned. He told me they had finally tracked down the man responsible for the messages. They had found him in a run-down apartment on the outskirts of town, surrounded by a disturbing collection of photographs of me and other women. The apartment was filled with an assortment of smart devices, all connected to a central computer. It seemed he had been watching and terrorizing his victims for months, maybe even years. They had arrested him, and he was now in custody. The officer reassured me that I was safe. The nightmare was finally over. Relief washed over me, but it was tinged with sadness and anger. The man had invaded my life and the lives of others, all because of a simple Craigslist ad and a smart lamp. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Until next time, stay spooked.